I discovered 10 unbelievable winter horror stories that will haunt your snowy night. I never should have opened that door. The air was thick with an unshakable dread, like a weight pressing on my chest. I went about my regular evening routine, the charm of a cozy winter night almost hypnotic. The low glow of my lamp flickered, shadowy figures danced on the walls, and outside, the snow fell in a hushed embrace over the world. It felt safe, but there was something brewing in the deep, dark corners of my mind. Then it happened. A strangled whisper echoed through the empty house. Cold seeped through every crack, sending shivers down my spine. I glanced around, my heart racing. Shadows stretched between the furniture. Each corner seemed alive with secrets. The walls creaked, and floorboards groaned under a heavy silence. Anxiety clawed at my throat, constricting it tighter. Every noise felt magnified, a tapping at the window almost like fingernails against glass. I willed myself to ignore it, but the chill in the air felt charged, prickling my skin. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing my feet to remain rooted to the floor. But curiosity gnawed at me. What was lurking beyond the thin barrier of my home? I moved closer to the window. My breath fogged the glass. The night was a whirl of blackened trees and moonlight reflecting off the untouched snow, blinding and surreal. A figure slipped between the shadows. My heart leaped. Was it real, or just my mind playing twisted tricks? I blinked, and it was gone. Just like that. The strange noises persisted, a haunting symphony that wove through the air, wrapping around me like a cold, clammy blanket. Was that a breath I heard? A soft, flickering sound that turned my blood to ice? My instincts screamed at me to bolt, to run and hide. But I felt paralyzed, a spectator in my own horror show. Then I saw it again, a silhouette in the distance, shifting, waiting. Panic surged inside me. What did it want? Why was it here? I turned, ready to flee, when a loud bang reverberated against my back, a door slamming against the wall. My mind raced. Who or what was there? I spun around, and there it was. A figure, indistinct yet overwhelming. Fear engulfed me, stealing away my breath. Was this the end? I froze, suffocated by dread. And in that moment, as a cold shiver traveled down my spine, I could only scream, "Hey!" Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure stood before me, a shadow directly lifted from my worst nightmares. It was unnaturally tall, its limbs grotesquely elongated and swaying with a bizarre fluidity that defied all reason. The air shifted around it, dark tendrils creeping from the ground, curling into the corners of the room. I could barely breathe, my heart pounding erratically like a trapped bird. Time slowed as my instincts kicked in. I stumbled backward, every fiber of my being screaming to escape, to flee from whatever horror stood before me. But another sound penetrated the haze of terror, a low growl, a rhythmic, inhuman sound that clawed at the edges of my reason. The figure moved toward me, impossibly silent, its joints cracking like ice splintering beneath pressure. I could barely make out its features. Eyes glimmered, murky and reflective like the depths of an unfathomable abyss. They bore into me, a slow realization dawning that it had ears, sharp and pointed, pierced by nails akin to glistening icicles. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking above the growing tempest in my mind. Silence stretched into eternity. But then came the answer, a sharp hiss that seemed both a question and an invitation, folding the air around us into a chilling caress. I could feel its breath, a frosty gust carrying the scent of decay, just as the room chilled further. I froze, suddenly aware that the window's fogged glass had vanished, replaced by a haunting darkness that seeped into every corner of my home. That it advanced menacingly, gliding with an air that suggested it had no need for feet, drawing magic from the shadows themselves. My instincts finally propelled my body into action, and I turned, scrambling for the living room door. The floor felt foreign under my frantic haste, and as I reached for the knob, the lights flickered violently, plunging me into a darkness festooned with piercing red shadows that sliced through the blackness. I burst into the living room, heart hammering, but the space was empty. Desperate for escape, I searched for the nearest exits. The door to the hallway loomed before me, shadowed and ominous. But as I stepped forward, a cold breeze engulfed me, whipping through the space like a banshee's moan. Suddenly, the walls themselves seemed to shift and pulse, as if the house were alive, breathing around me. The air thickened with whispers, incoherent at first, but as I strained to listen, the words morphed into something eerily familiar. My own name, spoken in mocking tones, darkly sweetened with malice. A sickening sensation twisted my stomach. Emily whirling around, I scanned for the source, my sanity unraveling with each echoing call. The very walls appeared to be closing in, enclosing me in their suffocating embrace, while the wind outside turned into a cacophony of voices overlapping, swirling in a chaotic melody that unnerved my already fragile mind. And in a moment of sheer terror, I veered toward the front door. My fingers trembled against the handle, and a jolt of adrenaline coursed through me as I pulled it wide only to be met with a wall of pure white, blinding and unyielding as snow whipped viciously against my skin. That I stepped back, panting heavily, failing to comprehend reality. The figure behind me materialized instantly, its presence a chill that threatened to freeze my soul. "Stay," it hissed, each word dripping with ice, and suddenly the room danced with shadows leaping over the furniture, flickers of movement making it impossible to discern where one shape ended and another began. They swirled faster, gathering momentum as the figure pushed closer. I glanced back toward the door where the outside world should be, but behind that door was nothing but an endless void of swirling storm, darkness incarnate. The lights flickered again, and I fell to my knees, quaking with panic, and that when it all fell into place. The stories I'd heard, the warnings whispered by those who had dared venture out in similar storms, all bore a heavy truth I had dismissed. The winter wasn't just a season, it was a living thing, hungry and fierce. That in that chilling moment, the reality of my surroundings sank deeper, the very air vibrating with an ominous chant that spoke of things lost to time, powerful and terrifying. I felt the shadows closing in as fear paralyzed me, yet some vestige of hope flickered in my chest. I had to find a way to survive, but just as I began to scramble for an escape, the heavy thud of footsteps echoed within the house, and from the depths of the darkness, a new figure emerged beneath the wavering light. Strikingly familiar yet twisted beyond recognition. It smiled with a chilling warmth, the face I once knew, now warped by despair. "Emily," it sang sweetly, "you've come home." The walls began to close in, shadows thickening, and I felt fingers grasping at me from every direction. I opened my mouth to scream, but until I could muster the last bit of strength, the world around me spiraled away into an unfathomable chasm of frost and terror. And then the darkness laughed. I awoke on the living room floor, tangled among the remnants of my shattered sanity. The familiar furnishings of my home felt foreign and menacing in the dim light, which flickered erratically like a heartbeat preparing to cease. As I slowly rose to my feet, the cold seeping into my bones seemed to whisper promises of an everlasting abyss. My heart raced as I scanned the room for any traces of the nightmares that had just ensnared me. The figure, that abomination summoned from the storm outside, lingered in the corners of my mind like a stain that refused to wash away. But worse than the horror of that faceless malignity was the familiarity of the second presence, the twisted version of someone I once knew, entrapped in my own house, mocking me with its unnerving smile. "Emily," it called again, the sweetness in its tone a stark contrast to the ice that fissured in my veins. I tensed, the walls pressing closer, the ambience thick with anxiety. "You abandoned us. You thought you could escape." Escape? I hadn't abandoned anyone. This creature, standing at the edge of my memories, threw a trap of realization over me, an illusion of my past wrapped in grotesque parody. My childhood friend, Kayla, whose laughter brightened even the darkest corners. But this thing wearing her face twisted it into something sinister, smothering the warmth of friendship beneath layers of despair and hate. "Kayla?" I gasped, mustering the courage to take a single step towards the horror. "What happened to you?" The creature's eyes gleamed a fluorescent blue, catastrophic warmth seeping from its hollow pupils. It laughed, a sound thanking the whispers of the storm, and the shadows behind it squirmed in delight. "What happened to me? Oh, darling, it was you who chose ignorance over understanding." As it spoke, the boundaries of reality started to glitch, and the room trembled around me. Ghostly images flickered in and out of view, frozen moments of tragedy. Friends I never knew were lost to my careless neglect. They reached out with twisted limbs, mouthing silent pleas that echoed in my head, each image more disturbing than the last. The weight of the specters grew heavier, and I felt my own memories surge, suffocating me with grief and betrayal. I turned my back on the creature, desperate to break free. But as I stepped, every surface became a mirror reflecting fractured memories. Golden photographs contorted into grotesque masks of despair. In that moment I comprehended what they were all saying. She chose the cold, Kayla's form echoed, her familiar voice tinged with the frost of the grave. She let it in, and now it's hungry. Before I could process this revelation, the shadows danced with exhilaration, and I felt a pulse beneath the ground, reverberating with sinister energy. Tendrils of ice crept around my ankles, anchoring me, squeezing tighter like a vice. I cried out, wrestling against the unearthly grip, panic flooding my senses. With one final surge of adrenaline, I tore myself free, stumbling toward the corridor that led to the back of my house. Each step beat like a drum in the haunting void where laughter once resided, echoing the death knell of my sanity. I could hear whispers, now soft yet distinct, crawling under my skin like biting insects, saying words I couldn't quite discern but recognized as my own guilt laid bare. "Emily," they sang, "you invited the storm in." Racing toward what I hoped was escape, I lunged for the back door, feeling like a hunted animal driven only by terror. But then I stopped short, breath catching in my throat as I beheld what awaited in the darkness beyond, an expanse of blinding white snow, impossibly deep and swirling with malevolent intent, unfurling like a white shroud, hiding fatal secrets beneath. I hesitated, memories of childhood blizzards flooding back, hiding beneath blankets, believing safety lay in the warmth of home, never once questioning what lurked just beyond. "Don't you want to play?" Kayla's voice echoed from behind me, her grin widening as darkness enveloped her form, turning her into another layer of shadow. "You know the rules, you let it inside. Now you must join." And then, as the shadows conspired around me, I caught a glimpse of a new figure emerging from the storm, the original figure, tall and grotesque, gesturing with long-fingered hands that beckoned me willingly to the abyss of frozen despair. The last thing I saw was its eyes, deep pools of hunger before the shadows surged, and the weight of my past collapsed upon me like an avalanche, erasing all light, sound, and sense of existence. And then a sudden crack resounded, a door slamming shut, or perhaps something far worse. The storm had a new craving, and the cries of those who once lived echoed into a chilling embrace as darkness took me whole. The numbing chill seeped through the cracks of my consciousness, dragging me upward from the depths of despair. I felt the cold grip of the ground give way to a hard surface, instinctively pushing myself up. My heart drummed violently in my chest, the echo of that terrible crack still ringing in the air like a death knell. Where was I? I blinked against the overwhelming white and impenetrable fog of swirling snowflakes stung my face. I was outside, but the familiar contours of my home had vanished, lost somewhere in the tempest that raged around me. There was no sign of the door I had clung to moments before, just endless white, a vast expanse of blizzard swiftly swallowing my last remnants of hope. A flicker of movement shattered the monotony of the snowfall to my left. My pulse quickened as I turned to face it, squinting through the thick haze. The air was dense with the scent of frost and despair, laden with shadowy figures dancing at the periphery of my vision. "Emily," they whispered, breathless echoes caught in the whirlpool of snow. I stumbled backward, heart racing. They were here, the lost souls I had thought just mere figments of my imagination, trapped in their spectral forms, limbs frozen in a perverse mimicry of life, their eyes gleaming and hollow bored through me, filled with suffering I couldn't comprehend. Were these the cheerful faces of my childhood, twisted and tormented because of me? No, no, I gasped, shielding my face from their haunting sight. You're not real, you can't be real. Yet a sinister calmness settled over the storm, dampening my cries in the unsettling silence that followed. The winds ceased their howl, replaced by the gentle pattering of snowflakes falling like forgotten whispers. My very soul recoiled, the weight of their stares heavy upon me. They were waiting, watching, their breaths mingling with the cold air, each exhalation laced with the unspoken accusation's betrayer. Join us, they beckoned, spectral fingers reaching out, brushing delicately against my skin like the touch of icy fingers running through my hair. I gasped, stumbling back, but the ground beneath me felt alive, pulsing as the snowflakes melted into a thick, sludgy mire that clasped at my feet, pulling me closer to the pit of icy hell they hungered to share. No, I cried, fighting against the magnetic pull of regret and sorrow, desperately clawing at the icy surface beneath me until my fingers were raw and bloodied. But the whispering grew louder, harmonizing into a mournful song of all I had lost. You chose the cold, they sang, their voices entwined, a chorus of grief and anger extending the chill wrapping around me like a shroud. Just as I thought I couldn't hold on any longer, another figure emerged from the storm, skeletal and draped in shadows. It moved with a fluid grace that was both mesmerizing and nauseating. A gaunt silhouette stepped closer, and the air grew thick, heavy with dread. I felt an oppressive sadness radiate from its every motion, as if it carried the burden of countless souls trapped between life and afterlife. Emily, it crooned, the voice unexpectedly tender yet dripping with malice. You've come so far to meet your fate. Are you prepared? I teetered on the edge of the haunting abyss, paralyzed as it approached, showing glimpses of the lost Kayla among them, her face contorted in eternal sorrow, mouth shaped in an eternal scream. They were all desperately reaching for me, their cries wrapping tighter around my heart, clenching with the chill of despair. No, I screamed again, anger igniting my fear. I didn't open the door, I didn't let you in. But the words felt muted, swallowed by the storm. The figure reached out, a skeletal hand extending with an invitation as I felt the ground quaking beneath me, shifting and twisting like a living thing. Join us, Emily, the figure said softly. Yet there was a crack within its voice, an echo of something more malevolent. You can't resist forever. We are your past, your guilt, we are home. I felt a surge of frantic adrenaline, a primal instinct to flee from the faces of my past while despair clawed at my heart, demanding to turn back. But then the blizzard erupted into a torrent, the snow whipping violently around us, suffocating my cries. Just as I turned to break free, I felt a warm breath against my neck, a tangible sense of presence that made my stomach drop. A voice I could barely recognize, dripping with the ice of ages, whispered, "You left a door ajar, Emily. Now it's open wide." And then I turned, and the last remnants of my sanity shattered, the painful reality clawing from deep within me as I beheld the storm swirling and folding upon itself. I was no longer alone. The darkness had filled in the gaps, and the figure stepped into the storm, revealing the most grotesque shape of it all, myself, standing amidst the swirling chaos, twisted in torment. Everything around me dissolved as I begged for release, for anything but this realization. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the ground beneath me cracked open, revealing an abyss darker than the night, beckoning me to plunge into its hungry depths. With a deafening roar, the storm surged with frantic violence, and I was swept away not into death, but into a nightmare from which I may never wake. The darkness enveloped me, a suffocating shroud pressing down upon my soul, and as I fell into the abyss, I grasped at the emptiness, desperate to stop my descent. But there were no hands to catch me, no solid ground to anchor me back to reality. I landed softly, as though the ground had yielded to my weight, a cruel mercy in this nightmarish descent. Sitting up, the freezing air filled my lungs like shards of ice, the taste of blood coppery in my mouth. The landscape was foreign. I found myself surrounded by distorted reflections of the world I had once known. Towering trees, their bark twisted and black as if scorched by a great fire, loomed overhead, stretching into a jet-black sky devoid of stars. The environment pulsed with a quiet, sinister energy, every shadow weaving tales of woe and anguish. "Emily," came the whispers again, trailing through the air like the rustling of dead leaves. The sound was disembodied, echoing in the distance but intimately close, as if the forest itself conspired against me, urging me deeper into its dark embrace. That I stood, shivering not just from the cold, but from a growing sense of dread that gnawed at my insides. With every step, I could feel the ground tremble beneath me, a heartbeat in sync with my growing anxiety. The whispers curled around me, wrapping tighter with each conscious breath, as if to ensure I was not alone. Peering through the darkness, I saw them again, figures emerging from the treelines, their bodies contorted and their faces obscured by shadows. Yet I could feel the sorrow radiating from them. They swayed in unison, a dance of death and regret, their voices rising to a fevered pitch. "You chose the cold, Emily. You belong with us," they sang, the finality of their words piercing through the cacophony of winter nights. I stumbled back, panic clawing at my throat. "Leave me alone. I don't belong here," I cried, but the forest only absorbed my voice, mocking me with silence. My heart pounded with the frantic rhythm of fear, urging me to escape, yet every direction felt like a trap. The figures moved closer, their forms morphing into grotesque resemblances of people I loved, twisted into parodies of what they once were. Kayla emerged first, her once bright smile replaced with a wide, ghastly grin that stretched unnaturally across her face. "Why did you abandon us, Emily? Why did you open the door?" My soul screamed as I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to block out the haunting melody of accountability. "It wasn't me. I didn't do it," I howled, but the forest echoed my words back to me, distorting them, turning my denial into a cruel jest as the figures drew nearer. The air thickened with a foul stench, like decay and ash. I turned to run, racing into the trees, branches clawing at my skin as I pushed through, tearing at my clothes. Every direction I faced led me deeper into their purgatory, as shadows lurked just beyond my sight, taunting me with their whispers, and then I saw it, a faint light up ahead, a flickering hope like a candle in the storm. I darted toward it, driven by a primal need to escape. As I burst from the trees, I found myself in a clearing, a small cabin standing precariously amidst the darkness. Its windows were aglow with a warm golden light, and for a heartbeat, I felt hope. But that flicker flickered far too lightly to banish the shadows clinging to the edges of my sanity. As I stumbled forward, something moved behind me. A shadow flitted just out of reach, dancing just beyond the periphery of the light. I dared to look, and terror washed over me like a tidal wave as I saw countless figures pouring from the forest, their eyes agleam with malice, faces twisted in fury. And I rushed to the door, heart hammering, grasping the rusted handle. With a terrifying creak, the door swung open as though welcoming my inevitable demise. The warmth flooded over me like a deluge of comfort, drawing me inside, yet I hesitated at the threshold. The darkness behind me swelled, drawing close, and I could hear their frenzied whispers urging me forward into the sanctuary. Or, perhaps into the depths of a greater horror. Then, from within the cabin, a voice echoed out a chilling familiarity that turned my blood to ice. "You've come home, Emily. Your true home awaits." I stepped inside, recognizing the face of the last person I ever wanted to see. But before I could process it, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening thud, trapping me in this new nightmare. My fate was sealed. The light flickered out, plunging me into darkness. And as my eyes adjusted, I heard the voices again, clearer, colder, converging on me as dozens of eyes glowed angrily in the black, demanding answers. But more than that, demanding my soul. A scream ripped from my throat as the figures crowded around, and I was left teetering on the edge of the end, unable to escape the inescapable truth. It was never about leaving. It was about accepting the darkness inside. This was mine now. I belonged here. And then I heard it, a low, haunting chuckle echoing from the depths of the cabin. And I could feel the door behind me push open once more, a gateway into an even darker unknown. The air within the cabin was thick and suffocating, laced with the scent of rot and something far more sinister, a lingering essence. The ghosts of past lives entwined in the very walls surrounding me. My heart raced as the door swung wide, inviting me not just back to the dim light of the entrance, but into an even deeper darkness. A space where nightmares mingled with the remnants of choices long buried. "Stay close, Emily," the familiar voice crooned, slithering through my mind like a serpent. It was Jacob, my older brother, the one who had vanished on a cold winter night years ago, leaving only questions and a heavy, dark void behind. His face shimmered in the whimpers of flickering candlelight, spectral and yet so sweetly familiar. "You never should have come here, but we can't let you go now. Not again. Jacob?" My voice trembled, a moth caught in a web of longing and terror. The shadows danced as I moved further into the cabin, the floor creaking ominously beneath me. The walls pulsed, almost breathing, as though they held secrets, those that existed before me and those that were yet to unfold. "What happened to you?" He smiled, but it was an expression void of warmth. "I found peace here, Emily. You can too. Come join us as we always intended. You really are home." The golden light flickered again, revealing more faces lurking in the recesses of the room. Familiar faces twisted with grief, anger, and despair. Each resemblance struck at my heart like a dagger. Memories flowed back, moments filled with laughter shared around the table, voices raised in joy, and then silence, the crushing, unbearable silence that had followed Jacob's disappearance. And now they wanted something from me. Their faces blurred, becoming mounds of grief, each pleading with hollow eyes. "You wound us," they echoed in unison, voices layered like an incomprehensible chorus winding its way into my mind. "Why did you forget?" "Forget what?" My breath quickened as the cabin began to spin, walls warping like a funhouse mirror, each figure creeping closer, the very fibers of my sanity unraveling. "I haven't forgotten you. I can help you." Please. Jacob stepped forward, the candles casting eerie shadows that distorted him further. "Help? You can help us, yes, or you can succumb to the darkness." His tone shifted, becoming a command, laced with an unmistakable edge of malevolence. "Embrace it, Emily. Embrace what you truly are." I stumbled back, my back colliding with a wall, the barely there whisper of the forest seeping in through the cracks. Shadows glided past me, ragged murmurs filling the air, dripping with regret and sorrow. "They all want in," one of the figures hissed, a fog settling in their eyes, a miasma thickening the notion of escape. "No!" I screamed, scrambling toward the door, heart pounding like a war drum. But as I reached out, Jake's voice pulsed through the air, chilling my marrow. "You're not leaving this place, Emily, not when we've come so far. You must choose." I turned back to him, eyes frantically darting around as the other figures surged, pressing their bodies against the walls, their faces blending into grotesque masks of despair. "Choose. You can join us, or you can become nothing, a memory too faint to hold on to." The darkness thickened, wrapping around me like fog, stifling and sultry. "What do I have to do?" I barely managed to choke out, heart racing as all eyes bore into me, each one urging me forward, coaxing me toward a truth I did not want to face. "Let go of your guilt, Emily," Jacob whispered. "The past is a heavy burden. It's time to cast it off. Choose the cold." He reached for me, his hand glistening with a spectral light, an unholy promise of freedom entwined with danger. In that moment, chaos erupted, the candles extinguished, the cabin swallowed by an all-consuming darkness. I could hear the figures' pleas morphing into growls, a hungry crescendo calling forth the shadows within. Panic seized me, and as I turned to run, a sinister hiss curled around my neck, quietly reminding me that I would leave only when they willed it. And then, as I made one last sprint for the door, I caught a glimpse of something in the corner, a shadow detached from the figures. It slithered toward me, devoid of human form, swirling with a darkness darker than my worst fears. "Don't you see, Emily?" A new voice spoke, chilling and yet familiar. You were meant to be here forever. The cold is coming, and so are our debts to be paid. The walls quaked, the shadows beckoned, and in that moment, the realization shattered through my mind like glass. I was not merely in a nightmare, I was the nightmare. Then, as my heart twisted in agony, the figure lunged at me, and I felt the world spin away, just before it engulfed me. A single thought screamed in my head: what if the darkness inside of me was greater than the shadows creeping around us? And in one horrifying instant, the truth splintered open, a collision of light and dark, and screams echoed in the void as I fell into a chasm deeper than I had ever known. I was suspended in nothingness, the air thick with despair and wails that echoed like trapped spirits. Time lost all meaning, each second a knife twisted in my gut. I felt the grip of unseen hands clawing at my skin, pulling me deeper into a well of shadows where light ceased to exist. It was as if I were the pulse of the darkness, the heartbeat of the very fear that I had run from for so long. Welcome back, Emily. The words slithered around me like smoke, familiar yet grotesque. The voice materialized from the void, wrapping itself around my consciousness, squeezing until I felt the heaviness of it all pressed down, reminding me of what I was escaping. It was a sinister embrace, but it wasn't. Jacob S. Who are you? I gasped, adrenaline spiking through my veins as an indiscernible shape coalesced in the darkness. The horror deepened, knowing that it had no form but was somehow more real than any figure I had ever known. I am what lingers when promises are broken, it whispered, the sound a blend of laughter and tears. What haunts the living and corrupts the lost. You brought me here, Emily. I fed on your fears, and now we shall feast together. I writhed, trying to escape the coils of this horror, desperate to claw my way back to the cabin, to the flickering lights that momentarily promised safety. But the void held me tight, and graphic images of all I had run from flashed through my mind. The snow-blanketed forest, suffocating with isolation, and the day Jacob vanished, swallowed whole by that desolate wilderness. You want to know what happened to him? The voice curled around my thoughts, each word a knife twisting deeper, exposing wounds long ignored. He was never lost. He chose to stay, just as you will. No, I screamed again, but my voice only faded into the suffocating whisperings that surrounded me, a cacophony of anguish feeding on my desperation. I don't belong here. I can't become like you. Can't or won't. It countered, slivers of malice pinching the edges of its tone. Your heart craves what lies beneath the skin of this world. You've already embraced the shadows within you. With a sudden jolt, I felt the pull of the cabin once more, the wood groaning as though alive with energy. As my vision blinked back into focus, I was hurled back into the small room, but it was no sanctuary. The once familiar faces were now twisted mockeries, each one a mask of despair and longing. The shadows' edges frayed and split, the air thick with an impending storm that vibrated through my bones. I darted to a corner, gasping for breath, when the air shifted, oppressive and charged with an electric heat. Stop running, Emily. Jacob's voice rang out, now fractured with something darker. They're hungry. They'll always be hungry. Help me, please, I cried, tears spilling down my face, the bitterness of despair seeping into my mouth. But instead of compassion, the room erupted in hoarse laughter, a symphony of anguish rising around me, drowning out my words. Join us, one of them shrieked, yet it was a summons to become one with the wretchedness. Drop your chains, let go of your pain. We only want you to feel all that we feel. Desperation clawed at my throat. This isn't my family, I shrieked back, but the shadows surged forward, coiling around my limbs like vipers, threatening to crush my resolve. You're not real. Real? A figure stepped forth from the darkness, a gaunt silhouette shaped like Jacob. We are as real as the choices you've made, as real as the scars you carry, the weight of your guilt. You're too far gone to escape, aren't you? Accept your fate. No, I refuse. I felt a surge of numbing determination flood my veins as I clawed against the ropes of despair binding me. Suddenly, I broke free of their embrace, bursting into the unsettling light of the candles flickering against the walls. But something was wrong. I turned, horrified, to see through the shadows looming behind Jacob, a portal of darkness. A swirling void that beckoned the entrance to whatever awaited me if I succumbed to them. The choice reared its head again, sinister and irresistible. "Join us, Emily." Jacob's voice became a far-off echo, its seductive lilt promising solace from my inner turmoil. "Find your peace at last." Then I saw it, a new figure emerging, grotesque and shrouded, its face obscured, yet its presence vibrated with malevolence. I felt the cold seep back into my bones as it reached out, fingers elongated and sharp, gesturing toward the portal. I stumbled back, and as I did, the floorboards began to crack and splinter beneath my feet. "Choose or be chosen," the ominous figure hissed through gritted teeth, as the shadows from the walls lunged toward me in a wild frenzy. As the darkness clawed at my legs, the cabin began to groan and creak, the very structure threatening to consume all light as I teetered on the edge of an abyss. And with one earth-shattering roar, the wind burst forth, howling like something lost, and I understood in that desperate instant the true horror was not just the shadows around me. It was the part of me that wanted to join the wretched souls in their eternal wail, to be finally free. Just as I thought I found my strength and made the decision that could save me, I heard it. The sound of familiar laugh, heart-wrenching and hollow. "Welcome home, Emily," and everything snapped. The cavernous maw of darkness yawned wider, and the world plunged into a whirlwind of chaos as all hope was stripped away. In that last fleeting moment, everything went dark, and I could only wonder if I'd ever escape the family I never truly understood. The howling wind ceased, leaving behind an echoing silence that filled the cabin like a suffocating fog. My heart raced, each thud resonating painfully in my chest as I swayed on the brink of oblivion. I could feel it, the pull of the unseen, a treacherous gravity dragging me towards the darkness that beckoned from the portal. "Emily?" The voice was faint, barely cutting through the haze of despair. I spun around, the shadows swirling like wraiths. But there was no one besides the monstrous figure looming in the corner. It crackled with energy, the air around it humming in disbelief, waiting for my acceptance. "Choose or be chosen," it repeated, the ghastly smile impossibly stretching across its face. Eyes void of emotion yet radiating an intense hunger. A shiver crawled up my spine, the weight of the moment palpable around me. I can't. I breathed, the truth crushing me under its intensity. My legs trembled as the choice I feared lay wide open before me, a chasm of pain and darkness. I was still holding on to a flicker of fear that granted me the strength to fight, to stay. But just then, sharp laughter erupted from the darkness, a sound that gnawed at the corners of my mind. "It doesn't matter, dear Emily. The moment you stepped into the void, you sealed your fate. The shadows know you. They're already inside you. You long for them." "No," I snapped back, defiance tinged with desperation. "You don't know me. I 1T what?" The jagged voice interrupted, its tone laced with malevolence. "Fight? Escape? Look around. The family you remember has always been infused with shadows. Your terror, your choices." Then, as if conjured by my unguarded thoughts, images flickered around me, fractured memories of childhood laughter that twisted into cries, family gatherings where smiles faded into eyes devoid of warmth. Each scene morphed into grotesque representations of a truth I had wished to bury, and amid them, Jacob, laughing. Yet something behind that laughter was raw and unhinged, swelling like a storm beneath his skin. "No, it's not like that," I cried, haltingly drawing back from these reminders, rebounding against my crumbling resolve. "Jacob would never, he would never want this." The grotesque figure slithered closer, tauntingly. "What if he already chose? What if he's waiting for you? With open arms, will you accept his invitation?" In a moment of wild terror, I saw it, the flicker of Jacob's familiar form standing at the edge of the portal, adorned in shadows, extending his hand. The warmth of his presence quaked my conviction, drowning it in regret and longing. I thought of his laughter wrapped around me like a woolen comfort, but even that memory soured, dripping with betrayal. "Stay with us," Emily, came the whispers, the chorus of pleas amplifying in the air with unnatural fervor. We can show you joy beyond this pain. Don't you want to belong? For an instant, I wavered, gazing into the murky depths of the portal that promised an end to my torment. But that flicker of hope swiftly dissipated, twisting into the realization of what I would have to forsake the remnants of my family, even if they were cloaked in shadows. Jessica, Mom, Dad, I murmured, feeling the weight in my throat as the shadows roared louder, feeding off my despair, deepening their grip. Please. Suddenly, I felt a violent tremor in the floor beneath me. The beams above groaned under the strain of something unseen. The cabin itself seemed to scream with life as it warped and twisted around us, moreover collapsing in on itself. It doesn't have to be this way. I cried out once more, desperation fueling my brave step toward the light. Jacob's form flickered, caught between the two worlds, one of light, and one drowning in shadows. As I took a step closer to him, the darkness writhing behind him erupted. Foolish girl, you'll never escape the circle. You are bound by blood, and you cannot outrun your fate. The figure pushed the boundaries of reality, relentless in its hunger. But then, a fissure formed beneath Jacob, a crack opening like a mouth seeking to consume him whole. Emily, help me. His expression morphed into anguish, the playful laughter replaced by genuine terror. Just as his outstretched hand grasped for me, the ground beneath him shuddered, and he slipped backward, swallowed by the void. I shrieked, reaching in a futile attempt to pull him back. And then, just like that, the laughter stopped. The darkness surged, engulfing the cabin, washing over me like a tidal wave, turning every light to ash. The walls shimmied, melting together in an agonizing union, spectral hands intertwined, dragging me downward. The shadows around me screamed howls that reverberated against my bones. As the very air thickened, I saw at the edge of the abyss, keen glimmers of hope eclipsing into mere whispers of existence. Just before the shadows consumed me entirely, I heard it, Jacob's voice, clear and resonant, fighting through the cries of the lost. You can't let go. Choose now. But as the darkness clawed at my consciousness, I realized one horrifying truth. No matter my choice, there existed no escape. And when the darkness finally swallowed me, it did so with cruel, laughing joy. I gasped, lungs seizing in the thick air as I emerged from the void, the shadows writhing like serpents in search of prey. Adrenaline spiked my senses, sharpening the edges of reality. My surroundings flickered violently. One moment I was in the cabin. The next, I stood in a darkened forest, the silhouette of ancient trees looming ominously around me. The air hung heavy with decay, the scent of damp earth mixing with something rancid that clung to my skin. I stumbled forward, branches scraping against my arms like fingers of the damned trying to ensnare me. The fear in my heart beat like a war drum, urging me deeper into the looming shadows, my instincts screaming at me to run. Jacob, I shouted, the name tearing from my throat, a declaration of desperation. Silence enveloped me, deep and foreboding, as if the forest itself held its breath. My own heartbeat became the only indication of life, a stark reminder of my isolation. Yet, I wasn't alone. From the depths of the darkness, I could feel a presence, clawing its way toward me. Faint whispers rolled through the trees, words lost to the wind yet filled with malice. Welcome back, Emily, it's so lovely to see you again. The voice resonated from somewhere unfathomable, wrapping around me like a shroud, slippery and cold. With every step further into the woods, shadows morphed into indistinguishable outlines. They whispered secrets of my past, fragments of memories swirling like leaves caught in an autumn gust. I remembered family dinners, laughter echoing in the halls, and then darkness creeping in, faces twisting in torment. No, I shouted, pressing my hands against my ears, but the cacophony only amplified. This isn't real. Isn't it? The voice crooned, laced with mockery. The tree trunks twisted, contorting into grotesque shapes, faces materializing before me. They stared with hollow eyes, mouths gaping wide in silent screams of agony. their very existence entwined with my regrets. Emily, they're dying to meet you. The voice taunted, cascading like a haunting melody. Ghostly figures spilling from the branches, the lost souls of my family. Their once familiar features were marred by decay, eyes wide with longing, mouths etched in silent pleas. Help us! Join us! They echoed in a chorus, each call reverberating within the hollow spaces of my chest. I staggered back, a scream clawing its way out of my throat. No, you're not real. You're just shadows. Laughter erupted, heartless and chilling, reverberating through the forest until my very bones resonated with fear. The shadows lunged at me, their hands grasping, reaching out for a portion of my soul. We're all real, dear Emily. Everyone you've lost, all that you fear, back to reclaim what is rightfully ours. You belong with us. With that, a terrible wind swept through the trees, carrying the whispers of the lost and turning into howls of torment. The shadows surged forward, a wave of despair that swept across the forest floor, dragging me down into the terror that built upon itself like a collapsing house of cards in the chaos. I felt the darkness seep into my mind, each tendril binding my thoughts and feeding off my flickering hope. I clenched my fists, resolving against the tide, but then came the chill. The shadows encased my body, squeezing tighter, pulling me toward the rotted ground beneath. As the ground shook, I glimpsed a figure amid the shadows, a flicker of a white shirt, a flash of familiar eyes, and in that moment, I knew. It was Jacob, but twisted. His face was drained of color, filled with a desperate yearning. Emily, save me, he cried, and with each desperate breath, the pulse of the shadows intensified, entwining tighter around us both. Jacob, I screamed, shockwaves of despair ripping through my heart. I'm coming. I'll pull you back. With renewed strength, I forced my legs to move against the current of shadow, reaching for him. Just as our hands were about to meet, the earth cracked open at our feet, and bright light cast sharp angles against the darkness. A voice, booming with authority, tore through the whispers. Enough! You will not take her. In that moment, light erupted from the ground, pushing the shadows back while illuminating Jacob's features just long enough for me to see the grotesque merger between him and the darkness behind him, battling for dominance. The forest trembled as the light fell upon the night, but the shadows fought brutally against it. Cling to your love, Emily, the voice shouted. Fight for him, or you will both be lost. I grasped desperately for him, but an icy tendril snaked around my ankle, pulling me downward, into the cracks of the earth that stretched open like a gaping mouth filled with secrets. Zipping into the void, I felt my heart wrench away, the scream clawing at my throat. The darkness always comes for those who linger too long. And just like that, I teetered on the edge of oblivion, Jacob's anguished eyes growing dimmer, helplessly disappearing into the vastness of despair, while the shadows howled with delight. Each moment hung in the air like a curse, thickening with dread as I plummeted into the darkness, reaching desperately for the light that faded away. Before I could fade into oblivion as well, a whisper broke through the despair. Choose, Emily, light or darkness, but know if you choose darkness, what you lose shall return with a hunger. Choose now. Everything around me fractured, and I could feel the whisper of cold lips against my ear, coaxing me to surrender. And then, darkness swallowed the last of the light. The winds howled one last time before silence took over. I woke in a cold sweat, gasping as the night air cut through me like shards of ice. The familiar, once cozy comforts of my bedroom were now drenched in an unsettling void where the memory of warmth used to reside. Panic clawed at my chest as I scrambled out of bed, my heart pounding in my ears. Had it all been a dream? Could that darkness truly be gone? I forced myself to breathe steadily. The tempest I had faced felt stitched to my very soul, yet I couldn't shake the paranoia gnawing at my thoughts. Each creak of the house echoed like a ghost's whisper, and I found myself drawn to the window, peering outside into the inky night where the snow continued to fall in stark, silver sheets. As I gazed out, I noticed something moving. A solitary figure stood among the snow-draped trees at the edge of my backyard. My breath caught, there was no mistaking it. It was a silhouette, gaunt and distorted, swaying unnaturally in the fading moonlight. The shadows tumbled in a dance of malevolence around it, and despite the wintry chill gnawing at my bones, an unsettling warmth spread through me, calling out like an old friend. "Emily," it whispered, velvet smooth yet filled with a depth of anguish that twisted my gut. My breath quivered in my throat, because it wasn't just a voice I recognized. It was one that felt homely yet monstrous. It beckoned me closer, enticingly familiar, a terrible reunion under the guise of warmth. Suddenly, the rest of the world faded. I entered a kind of trance, compelled to step through the door into the night, leaving behind the safety of my walls. With every tremor of my hand on the doorknob, memories flooded back of laughter, of love, of choices unmade. Every face from the past resurfaced in spectral clarity, their smiles now fraying into contemptuous masks, beckoning me to remember what I had forgotten. The wind howled, but I was warmed by the familiar presence. "It's time, Emily. Time to come outside and play." As I crossed the threshold, an unnerving peace washed over me, and all semblance of hesitation melted within me like the snow underfoot. The shadows curled around my ankles like phantom arms, lingering, waiting patiently for me to welcome their embrace. It felt intoxicating, glorious, a promise of something I had chased for so long. But as I moved toward the figure, a sudden clarity pierced my disorientation. The footsteps of the past echoed behind me, and I turned in horror. Faces from my childhood surged forth, their features twisted in torment and accusation. Kayla, Jacob, Mom, Dad, they all stood behind me, fusing together into a grotesque tapestry of yearning. "Do you remember?" one of them hissed, venom threading through each word. "Do you recall how you left us?" I staggered back, realizing the truth that had eluded me. I had left that door open, not just to the night, but to the very shadows that breathed life into my darkest fears. I had chosen ignorance over acceptance, and now it was hungry, prowling just beyond the veil of my mind. The figure before me twisted, morphing into something even more corrupted, my own reflection, yet laced with horror. Its eyes shimmered with a hunger so profound it made my stomach turn. "I am what lies inside you," it whispered. "You left me here. We're one in the same, Emily, and we have so much to share." The cold seeped into my veins as every sobering truth crashed over me. The darkness I had fought was not merely an enemy. It was woven into the fabric of my very being, feeding on the terror I had stowed away. In that moment, it all came rushing back, the stories, the marks upon my family, each bite of sorrow birthed from my ignorance, the memories of joy lying dormant under layers of fear. I was the architect of this curse, not merely a victim of it. The echoes behind me urged me to turn back, to confront the ones I had wronged, to finally embrace their suffering. But as I stood poised between darkness and light, I felt the shadows tightening around my limbs. An instinct kicked in. "Stay," the figure exclaimed, its voice rippling with both menace and temptation. "You've always belonged here, and I will guide you through what lies beyond the hurt." But they were wrong. I had taken everything for granted. I had chained myself to all that was safe, until it took hold of me. "Let me go," I cried out, finally willing to escape the grasp of that which had once calmed me. With one last surge of will, I turned and sprinted back towards the shelter of my home, the shadows clawing at my heels, a desperate frenzy of curses and shouts echoing behind me. The door slammed shut, vibrating against the pressure of what now sought to pummel through to end the silence that followed. I flung myself against the wall, heart racing. It had all gone so wrong, unraveling into a sickening clarity. The darkness was my own, crafted by my fears, and as I looked down at my own trembling hands, I swore I could feel fragments of it lingering beneath my skin, clawing their way back. But in that final moment of clarity, I heard the whisper once more, a chilling familiarity warming the corners of my mind. "You're not done yet, Emily. You invited me in, and I'm never leaving." Then the shadows coalesced, wrapping around me like an eternal embrace. And deep inside, I felt it, the start of a new hunger, awakening and insatiable, a hunger that would never die. And just before darkness enveloped me completely, I understood my reality in its cruelest form. I was never meant to escape. I would forever become, not just a part of the shadows, but the very source of their hunger, and the echoes of my past would haunt me through oblivion. "Welcome home," Emily the figure whispered, and for the first time, I felt jubilance overtake me as I dissolved into the depths of my very own nightmare, the door wide open behind me, waiting for more.